Finance, Delene Wolf is in between Bryant and the school superintendent, Scott Cowart, all joining us this morning as we talk about the first day of school. We're going to talk about the end of grade, end of year testing that was just released last week by the Georgia Department of Education, and we'll talk about the decision pertaining to the millage rate, which is always a big topic of discussion around this time of year. So good morning to all of you guys, and thanks for coming out.
Good morning.
Absolutely. Good morning. All right. Well, first of all, I guess let's talk to maybe Scott and Bryant to have some ideas on this. The Georgia Milestones information was released on Friday, and get that information about reading, English language, mathematics, social studies, and science. And it's grades 3 through 8. Is that what that covers?
Well, 3 through 8, but it also includes the high school. I got end of course is the high school, and end of grade is the elementary and middle school.
Okay, and if you want to get information on those, it's a lot to read, it's a lot to go through, but you can get all that information from your grade and your kid's grade and the school they attend. It's online at gadoe.org. There's information there from the spring 2023 end of grade and the spring 2023 end of course that you can take a look at. Well, give us a summary of what you see, how the school system did as a whole.
Be glad to. Excited about several different pieces of the assessment results this year. The first one I want to highlight is our middle school scores. They are up this year, and it's something that we had put an emphasis on. The board had talked to us about really emphasizing middle school improvement, and their scores were up, and we're excited about that. Looking forward to even greater results as we move forward. Also very excited about math and science across the district, especially at our elementary level and middle school level. Those scores were up, especially as you look at comparison around surrounding districts and the state. As we look at that, one of the things that we really see is that our STEM program, science, technology, engineering and math is really starting to make a difference for our students when it comes to science and math, because it's really helped us engage them in a different way rather than just looking at it as a subject, but also looking at it as something they're interested in.
And found a use for math. I mean, because we talked about growing up that there's like, what do we do with this math later?
So our schools have really worked towards moving to be more STEM focused in their learning process and focusing on personalizing the learning around not just science and math, but also social studies and English language arts. But where it's manifested itself is really in the science and math area. So we're really excited about that and looking forward to how that will continue to grow. We now have 15 of our schools that are district STEM certified, and we have, I think, 7 schools that are nationally STEM certified, and looking to finish this year to get all the rest of the schools district STEM certified. And we think this will continue to make a difference moving forward for our students.
What's the process for that to be STEM certified? What does that actually mean?
The school has to go through a year-long process where teachers in the school agree to do extra learning around what STEM education is, how do you implement STEM education, how do you connect kids to relevant learning and create opportunities to engage them in the type of activities that create application. And through the year, the teachers do that, and they work with the students to learn how to do that appropriately. And then there's a point where they bring in a team that actually assesses the progress of the school, and then if they meet,
let them know what they're doing right and wrong. And, okay.
And once they reach a certain level, then they're able to get that certification. We're one of the few systems in the state that actually has a district level STEM certification. We decided several years ago that that's something we really wanted to focus on, and the reason we did is we recognized it would have such an impact on our math and science achievement. And so again, we're really excited. Dr. Marissa Ogando led that charge several years ago, and now Dr. Cheryl Clark is taking that forward and taking it to a new level.
I'm glad you gave her a nod, Dr. Marissa. I was always fond of her. You said you put in like extra emphasis on the middle school for the. What does that entail when you say extra emphasis? Are you like, hey, You guys do better? I mean, how do you put an extra emphasis on what you did?
Great question, Colin, because you know that, hey, do better. It doesn't work an awful lot of times, and or most of the time. And no, what it really means is that in the work that we did last year in professional learning with our schools and with our principals, then we looked at the data to see where there was opportunity for growth, and then really tried to dive into how do we actually move the needle? How do we actually create more instructional practices? More opportunities for students to better learn in that particular area. And so hats off to our middle school teachers, really, because they're the ones that dug in and did most of that work to look at that data, determine what instructional practices maybe needed to be strengthened. And then we would work with groups of teachers or individual teachers, depending on what the need was in a particular school, to bring additional support there, additional resources there, to focus on whatever the need was in that specific school. What might be the opportunity for growth at Temple Middle School could be different at Mount Zion Middle School. And so
why is that? Is it different educators? Why would there be different?
Well, it's just that you've got in a given school, you're going to have classrooms that all have different teachers in them, and each teacher is going to approach it sometimes in different ways. And trying to get some continuity, consistency of how they practice certain things that will make a bigger impact instructionally, trying to get that to be consistent and pervasive in that building. Well, then you apply that across the district, and then different schools will have different areas or gaps potentially maybe where there's opportunities for growth. So it's really about taking a microscope and drilling down and seeing what particular needs are in a particular place and bringing resources and support to bear from the district level and the school level to try to do that. And it's really an exciting process. It's what school improvement should be, and we're looking forward to what it's going to bring in the future.
Time right now is 8:37, speaking with representatives from the Carroll County School District. This first segment talking a bit about the milestone testing scores, which were released just last week by the Georgia Department of Education. We talked about the good stuff, and you said last year you put the emphasis on the middle school to improve those. From these scores now, what do you see that we have to improve on as a school district?
One of the areas of focus, and it really it's across the state this year, and it is true for us, just like it is everybody else, is and actually, Ms. Morris, you mentioned this earlier before the show started, that looking at children in our elementary school, especially in our third grade, but fourth grade, fifth grades, we look at that block of grades and we look at students. What we want to do is really spend more time this year looking at how we get children ready to read and be prepared to be on grade level reading as they get to third, fourth, and fifth grade. We're really excited the state has put a big emphasis this year on phonics instruction, and really how do we take literacy along with that phonics piece and do a better job when we have students who we identify as not on reading level. How do we structure getting them on reading level? So that's going to be a really big emphasis for us this coming year, and we think it's going to make a big impact. Our elementary principals, our elementary teachers have been working all summer to be prepared for that. And again, this is not just a Carroll County emphasis. This is a state of Georgia emphasis, and I really want to give a shout out to the state for recognizing that this is one of those things that can move the needle for children if we get more of them on reading level in the elementary grades.
Now the grading, I think, what are the top two tiers for that? Let me focus on reading. Is it proficient? Is that the top one? Proficient and higher? Is that the top grade?
Well, the way the state grades it, it's exemplary, proficient, needs development, and needs improvement.
Okay, so the top one's exemplary then. I'm thinking 72% might have been, 72% of each school was the average for the state of Georgia, right? I mean, that number, every year it kind of jumps out at me. 70, it's only 7 out of 10 that are either at their grade level or better than. Why is that not, why are we not worried about that? And not to say that you're not, but I'm saying, but it's that same number every year.
Well, I think that's what I just said. That's where the emphasis is as we move forward.
Yeah, it's just every year that number is like that. But we're not. Does that not worry you, that 70% number? It seems like a big deal to me. If there's 7 out of 10 kids in each class that just don't read to where they're supposed to read.
Yeah, and of course, we're talking about a state average, but when you look at individual schools, that's a lot better when you look at it in a lot of the schools around here. But again, the focus on getting kids at grade level reading at the early grades. But the bigger issue really is what happens in pre-K 2, because that's what sets up the child's ability to read third, fourth, and fifth grade, and that is a good indicator of success as we look at children moving into the middle school, into the high school. So our emphasis this year will be to continue to try to grow and improve what we do around how we teach children to read, how we improve literacy skills, and really digging into the phonics piece of that, because we think that that's a big part of the gap that's preventing some of our kids to, because a lot of our children who are not at the proficient level are right there at it, and we just need to move that needle to get them on up.
Time right now is 8:40. We're speaking with representatives from the Carroll County Schools District. You know what? I always say Carroll County Schools District. Am I wrong in doing that? Because it's schools in a district. It's not a school, one school district. But I always say Carroll County Schools. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong.
Okay, well, I mean, I can fix it. I mean, I go back and forth with myself all the time.
We're a multi-high school district. We have multiple clusters of schools, so I think that's an appropriate way to say it.
Good deal. I feel better about it now. Thank you. All right, we're going to take our first break and come back, and we're going to talk about the millage rate and the budget. There are 3 hearings for the millage rate that are still coming up, right? We haven't had one yet. 3. Okay, and we'll talk about that and much more when we come back from our first break. Community Voice brought to you by Tanner Health System, Oak Mountain Academy, News Talk 1330, FM 106.3.
The World Language Scholar Journey at Oak Mountain Academy is designed to provide students with a clearly defined, curriculum-based track to acquire essential knowledge and skills for success in biliteracy fields of study. The successful completion of this journey provides colleges with a method to recognize a rigorous foreign language immersion experience for all students at Oak Mountain Academy. I'm Patrick Duran, head of school, inviting you to journey with us on the mountain. For more information, visit us at oakmountain.us. Discover your journey at OMA. Prepare, explore, and achieve.
Health is a journey. It's making better choices, even when it's not easy. It's taking care of yourself and the people you love. At Tanner Health System, we're there for you with every step, with primary care, heart care, cancer care, women's care, orthopedics, surgical services, and so much more. We're dedicated to helping you live and feel your best. So let's get on that journey to health. You've got places to be for many years to come. Find us at tanner.org.
8:42. Welcome back to the WLBB Community Voice on News Talk 1330 FM 106.3. My name's Colin Worthington. This morning we are on the News Talk 1330 WLBB Facebook page, so I encourage you to go on there and post any questions or comments or anything you'd like reiterated during this conversation with representatives from the Carroll County Schools District who are on the program this morning. From the Carroll County Board of Education, we have Sandra Morris and Bryant Turner. Bryant's the chairman, Sandra the vice chair, and we have a financial assistant or assistant superintendent of finances, Delene Wolf, and we have Carroll County School Superintendent Scott Cowart on the program this morning. Now, this time of year, following property reassessments, we find out if everybody's property went up and then how that affects the tax digest for the county, and then all the little municipalities and the county and the school systems get to decide on a millage rate and how much money they'll get from taxpayers for that year to cover all their costs. This year, the tax digest went up significantly, and it's the highest differential from the previous year to the current year that I've seen in a long time. Although, I mean, it could be 3 years ago, and I just don't remember, but it just felt like there was a lot. Now, Delene, give us the process of how you decide on the budget. Without thinking about the millage rate at this point, when do you start working on the budget for the next budget that would be presented to the Board of Education?
Okay, the budget process is really a continuous process. So for the formal process for each year, it actually starts in the fall. And
for the next year?
Yes, for the following year. It involves several individuals throughout the district. Each of the assistant superintendents and the various directors compile a list of the needs for the district, and all of those needs are put together on a list for consideration by the board. We start looking at that list in the fall, and then beginning in January, that list is provided each month during the board meetings. The biggest portion of the district's general fund budget is personnel. That makes up 85% of the budget. And so the number one driver for the personnel budget is student enrollment. So also in the fall, the process begins where looking at student enrollment, projecting what student enrollment will be for the next year, and that then determines the number of staff that's required for the next year.
How do you determine that? How do you decide that there'll be 50 extra students next year or 15 less students the following year? How is that determined?
Each year we do enrollment studies and enrollment projections, and we bring in a consultant who helps us analyze not only what the current enrollment projects to be internally, but what is the atmosphere out in the community relative to new housing starts, business moving in, and things of that nature. And we take that and put it together in a projection that we provide, and then use that to determine what the allotments needs are for the schools.
Just everything we're talking about, I've got 15 other questions. I know we're not going to be able to get in 15 minutes. I mean, we'll talk about the tax allocation district and how that's affected, but I guess we won't be able to do that on this morning's program. So when you decide how much or what the school system's needs are for the following year, are you counting on a certain amount of money? Are you saying, all right, this is what we need? Are you basing it on last year's collections? How do you determine what would be your initial draft budget before the millage rate is decided and before the tax digest is decided? Do you say, all right, this is what we want this year, we're going to figure out a way to get all that money to pay for it?
Okay, so every budget is based on estimates. So the expenditures within the budget are based on estimates, including those enrollment projections, the projections of how much staff is required, and then all the other components that go into the budget. On the revenue or inflow side, we look at the historical trends, talk with the tax assessor's office, and look at projecting what the state component is. For schools, for our district, approximately 2/3 of the funding comes from the state, and approximately 1/3 comes locally. So the state funding is the biggest variable within the district's budget.
And to be fair, the state, when they see your tax digest has gone up, they expect you. It sounds like they expect you to take more local money because the state is going to give you less if your tax digest reaches up a different threshold, a different level, right?
Yeah, that is correct. So as the digest value increases, the district's local fair share also increases. Mm-hmm. So that can be a little bit more challenging because there are two components to that. In addition to the local fair share, it also impacts the district's equalization funding from the state, which is currently about 11% of our state funding. So changes in the equalization funding can have a bigger impact as well.
Speaking with representatives from the Carroll County Schools District on this morning's Community Voice program, talked a little bit about the budget. Now we've come to the process where you presented a budget and haven't set a millage rate yet. You basically got a good idea of the tax digest. So discussing the millage rate, how do you guys determine whether you want to raise the millage rate, if you're going to maintain it? Well, this year in particular, how did you decide if you wanted to raise the millage rate, maintain it, or lower it? Did decide tentatively to maintain it at this point. But how does that decision come about?
Well, Ms. Wolf brought up a good point in analyzing the budget. I think you asked the question a while ago, which was a very good question, a valid question about, how are you preparing, what are the information you're reading, getting to the budget. And we went into the budget season realizing at the current projections at the time before receiving the digest, it was going to put the budget at about a $900,000 deficit, if I remember correctly, going in. So the board had already sort of said, all right, we're going to have to take a very lean approach of trying to figure out, okay, do we decrease the budget or do we figure out a way to close that gap before knowing what that digest was going to become? And so from there, then the next thing we find out within the next month is what the digest actually is, or what the projections from the digest are. We had to begin quickly analyzing what is the difference between exactly what she called out, and that was the current digest amount that'd be received to manage that budget, and then in the effect of how much would that be reduced, over the local fair based on the local fair share over a 2 or 3 year period, which is about how long it takes before the state adjusts. So we have a very unique situation with the school board, unlike the commission, some of the city entities and those kind of things. That is, we can't just predict based off of the current digest. We have to predict the impact of that second or third year out, and what impact we will have in the future, because we receive less state dollars, the more we reduce the millage rate, the less state dollars we receive. So we're dealing with two numbers that impact future, for the school system and the budget. That was the biggest thing that sort of changes our process in trying to figure out what that millage rate needs to be.
You said you kind of started out the process being $900,000. The perspective was $900,000 in the hole. But why at that point? I mean, what are you basing that on? I guess the $900,000. Are you basing that on the previous year's collections?
Based on what was currently, coming in.
What was coming in?
Yes, but if it had remained the same.
But then I guess for this year, for that extra $900,000 that you were in the hole, what was that difference from the previous year? What was the $900,000? I mean, if you just duplicated the exact same budget from last year and then rolled back the millage rate this year, what was that initial? The
problem became the budget couldn't remain the same with the enrollment numbers. Like, for instance, what had impacted us most, if you take the last two previous year enrollment numbers, it was over 1,000 new enrolled students in Carroll County schools. Well, last year being the largest, or the year coming in being the largest, well, in order to meet the classroom needs, and which we're always focusing on trying to reduce that classroom size, which is one of the biggest elements out there in trying to get more individualized approach in education, trying to reduce those class sizes. And doing that, we were just trying to play catch up for the enrollment numbers, still not being able to address it as aggressively as we'd love to. And so the decision had to become, what do we do budget-wise to meet those enrollment numbers? And we added 41 teachers. Well, that's a big amount of adjustment we had to pivot and make
Salary
that. So that impacted
insurance.
The budget, the largest, yes.
So,
and you bring up another good point. The state health care impacted us. I think we were like at $9 million that we had not prepared for, that was trickled down from the state, that was going to impact our direct budget to supplement the insurance, health insurance for our employees. That was not something prepared that we were ready to face.
If reassessments didn't raise the tax digest this year, would you guys have had to raise the millage rate? Would you have made that decision to raise it?
We had actually, as a board, had decided that we would use our fund balance to close that gap, knowing that that would only be a 1 year. Everybody wanted to take a very conservative approach of saying, well, we may agree to this as a board to close the gap with our fund balance, knowing, though, that if something didn't change, we would have to address it in the next budget year. We did not want to create a cycle of always dipping into fund balance just to keep the budget balanced, but we felt like we could accept that for 1 year at the current balance in order to make that happen.
Anytime there is a reassessment and there's an increase in the tax digest, should property owners expect that they're going to end up paying more? I mean, because some people have three. Some people have the city, the school system, and the county that they're paying taxes on. I mean, and I know there's a giant difference in the government, Carroll County government, what it has to do with the school system. But they're able to roll it back this year.
Sure.
It's a little bit of relief. But when somebody's got, I forgot what the numbers were. I mean, Delene put a nice little thing out there, like if you have a $100,000 home, how much you'll pay and things like that. But I mean, for some people, that's going to be significant. Especially, since at that board meeting last month, you guys talked about what the forecast. We need to prepare for the future, but this is not letting property owners prepare as much, I think, because they're going to have to pay more in taxes.
Well, I think that brings up a really good point. Historically, and we use this too to sort of base where we're headed, nobody on our board wants to raise the millage rate. Nobody wants to make any increases. And historically, we've shown since 2011, the board has only reduced the millage rate. We were at 19.6 mills back in 2011, previous boards, and even last year we rolled it back a half a mill. And through those years of process from 2011 to 2022, we're down to 17.5 right now. So our goal actually has been to do everything we can to continue to decrease that millage. But the last thing we wanted to do was put ourselves in a situation knowing that the forecast 2 years out, that if we took the full rollback, the forecast for that rollback with the loss in state funds would put us at almost a $12 million deficit. Well, in doing that, we know that as a board, if we decide to roll this thing too far back, there would come a day that this would be in reverse. We'd have to start increasing the millage rate in order to maintain. That's not where we want to be. We'd rather take methodical, very careful steps and roll it back what we can and keep from ever having to increase that millage rate.
And every year there is that confusion about what means more, the millage rate or reassessments. I mean, when the reassessments come out, people are initially mad about the reassessments because it shows that they're how much they would pay if the millage rate would remain the same. So I mean, I wish, and I think that I try to communicate that well. Every year. So
well, Colin, real quick, the focus has been very much this tax season on the school board's millage rate. School board's millage rate. Look at your tax bill. School board millage rate.
It's the biggest one.
Okay, it's the largest one. Rightfully so. It's fine. It's also the largest budget, and it's also the opportunity for us to educate all the kids that are sent our way. But ultimately, what people have got to understand is there has been an assessment process. That key word has made the difference in the taxes. As I've said, we've continued to roll our millage rate back through historically as much as possible. But the assessment value of the property, what your property is valued at, is what has created the increase, not us increasing those millage rates.
See, I don't like that because the reassessment. I mean, you almost my property. I'd be more excited to see it go up. Like, all right, good, it's worth more. So if I move next year, I can sell it for more. But but all these entities have the opportunity to roll it back and not collect additional money.
Sure.
I mean, that's the choice when it comes down to it. So
but we're not in charge of assessments. We're not in charge of where that is. We just have to. Take the impact.
Aside from all the other stuff, you could make the decision to roll it back and not get additional money, take additional money from taxpayers.
Absolutely.
Well, I think what Mr. Turner said about the board's taking a very conservative approach. When you look at the last 12 years, we went from 19.6 to 17.5. We rolled the millage back 4 times during that time period. The board has worked very hard to make sure they're not in a position moving forward where they've got to drastically increase the millage. And our forecast shows us that if we roll back very much, that's exactly what would happen to Carroll County taxpayers. We'll be increasing the millage. And I don't think anybody wants us to roll it back and then turn right around and go back up. But we're missing a point here that I think is very important. We're very focused on learners in Carroll County schools. And when you look at the investment per learner, Carroll County Schools is the 6th lowest in the state for large school districts. It is the lowest of similar size school districts around here, the amount of money locally that we invest per learner.
Hang on, Josh, hit pause on that, and we'll go till 9:05 this morning. Sorry about that. Good.
But so we've got to also factor in, as we try to make these decisions, what are we doing for the learners in Carroll County? We're very proud of what we have done. We do more with less than any school system in this area. We'll put us up against anybody academically, arts, athletically, what we're doing for our teachers and our facilities. We're very, very proud of it. But we are still the lowest locally in investment per learner. And we do not want to expand the gap that we already have in our investment per learner. We want to try to close that gap in investment per learner. So that's another element that I think is not being thought through here. Our board is trying to be very conservative in their approach, both by looking at their stewardship for our taxpayers and not putting us in a place a couple years from now where we have to drastically increase the millage, but they also want to make sure that we're doing things to improve what we're doing for the learners, because the reason we have a school system is to take care of our learners. And every decision we make needs to be focused on what's best for our learners.
Now those stats, are they taking into consideration like East Blost? And not every county has East Blost, not every school system has East Blost. And you guys do get a significant bunch of East Blost. I know you can't spend it on everything, but it means that you can use your general budget on other stuff that, other school systems who may not have the East Blost, they have to pay for the buildings themselves. They have to, all those projects they have to pay.
But I think the thing you need to realize too, because of Carroll County's configuration, we receive less money from the state for construction and facilities than most school systems do.
Is that because of these laws?
Because our community many, many years ago made a decision to have community-based schools. That means that we receive less money from the state for construction of new classrooms. As Mr. Turner just said, we've grown 1,000 students
and
in the last
local
2 years.
stories.
We project that this year we're going to grow significantly again. And we all know our community is growing. And we have to position ourselves to be able to handle that growth, which actually adds another layer to what we're talking about as we try to think about what we're doing for learners. If we're growing significantly and we're not in a prudent way looking at how we're dealing with finances, then the amount we're investing per student will go down, and the gap between us and other school systems of what we can do for learners will increase.
All right, we just reached across the top of the hour, 9 o'clock, because we heard the station ID there. But let me ask some stuff. If anybody wants a question or comment here in the last 3 minutes, please post it to the News Talk 1330 Facebook page. John Wilson, and this is a statement. I don't know if it's accurate or not. How is it fair for out-of-state kids coming to our school system for free? The cost is around $9,000 per student per year, and they only pay a couple $100. This is not right. His assertion, is that an accurate assertion, and is that fair?
Well, we look at every student who comes in our school system independently and look at their opportunity to come. We base it on space. When there's not space available, we do not allow students to come in from, whether it be in Georgia or out of state. But we look at every situation individually.
Okay. There's like 15 questions here. I don't think I have time to go through them. Why don't you guys live stream your, like when you're talking about the setting the millage rate? I mean, the live stream on Facebook or the website, I think that would have been helpful. Why don't you guys live stream your meetings at all?
Well, we video every one of our meetings, and it's available for the public to get to.
Yes.
So that's something we've been doing, and the board can consider live streaming if that's something they'd like to do too.
Well, then we'll ask you, Bryant. Why don't you guys do that? Because I think people can ask for it, but people aren't going to go up there and ask for it, and then possibly have to wait 2 days and then get it on a disc or however you present it. But if they were able to watch it on Facebook, and you could even shut off the comments or whatever, but just have the opportunity to see all the board members speak.
It's been something that's just recently come up, in requests, and we just started receiving some of those requests, and we began immediately, talking together, trying to figure out, okay, how does that look? How does that work? What will it take technology-wise to do that? So it's been being looked at. Okay.
All right. Time is 9:03. Let me give you guys 1 minute as a whole. Say something good here for one minute. That's all you got. 1 minute.
Okay.
Well, Ms. Morris, we're so excited about the start of this school year, Colin. We, are so proud of what our teachers and all of our folks have done over the last many years, and we look forward to what is going to be an unbelievable year this year. We're going to grow again. We see it. We know it. But we're very excited about the literacy component I mentioned earlier to you about in our elementary grades. We think that's going to pay great dividends. We're very excited to be working with our community partners, our county commissioners, and Villarica and things like that on growth issues and opportunities that are coming. Our board has been very conservative in their approach for years, and we're very positive that with their leadership that we continue to do great things for our students.
58 seconds. Right on. All right, guys. Thank you for coming out.
Absolutely.
And we should do 2 hours next time.
Yeah.
Time right now is 9:03. So, Josh, make sure that pot is up and play those commercials, that 1 minute of commercials. And, again, thank you guys for coming out for this morning's Community Voice program. Thank you for checking in. I do apologize that I couldn't get all the questions that were on there this morning. Perhaps Sandra can go back and look at those and answer those all individually. Have a great Wednesday, everybody.
Thanks, Colin.